Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, welcome to the Global Citizen Forum again in Sveti Stefan, Montenegro. Allow me to start with a story about a family that, within a span of 3 generations, have experienced every form of migration we know. From the grandfather, who was running as a child from the Armenian genocide into neighboring Bulgaria and became a refugee, to his son, who was born after the Second World War into a communist ruling society. But he always dreamed for a life beyond the curtains of the Soviet bloc. He wanted to provide more opportunities, brighter future, more access to his kid. So he became an economic migrant to Canada. And then the grandson. He saw with his eyes the fall of the Berlin Wall, but he still remembers his parents waiting at 6 in the morning for milk and bread with a coupon in the hand. He was lucky though, he was traveling every summer and lived in 2 continents, crossing 15 borders. But crossing these borders at a time with the wrong passport, as you know, it could be a challenging and a humiliating experience, which defined very much that boy at the early age. As many have guessed by now, this is the story of my family. And my dream to overcome the only thing which was outside of my power, the place I was born. I decided this will not dictate who I am, where I can go, and who I can become. My grandparents and parents have migrated for economic and security reasons. I have chosen my residency and citizenship for lifestyle and investment opportunities. I share these stories with you because this was the foundation of Arton Capital. And our wish to help empower global citizens around the world, helping them expand the reach for their kids like my parents have done. By, of course, investing billions and billions of dollars into more than 10 countries we work with, providing support for local economies, creating jobs, empowering global citizenship. I share this story with you as well because I see a disturbing trend today, not with migration itself, but with the way we see migration. One would say is that we might live in the most incredible times of human history, where life expectancy is longer than ever. Technology is here to make us populate smart tomorrow. Personal growth, personal net worth increases every decade. But you would agree we have tremendous challenges to fix on planet Earth first. First and foremost, climate change. Just in the last 3 months, 3 hurricanes completely devastated the Caribbean the way we know it, affecting the lives of millions. The human and financial cost of climate change increases every year. We cannot ignore it anymore. Climate change is very much real. And it will affect everybody's life in this room. It's not a question of a if, it's a question of a when. It doesn't make a difference between poor and rich. It doesn't respect nationalities, borders, or religions. Experts say that by 2050, 10% of the global population will relocate from their place of birth because of climate change. This is 1 generation ahead. My kids will see it. Your kids will see it. Terrorism is on the rise. Political instability across the world. Extreme nationalism in every continent. You would agree we have reached a new social plateau of stress and anxiety. And one thing is certain, living in this age of anxiety is hard, but we need to learn to live with it. The primary victims of living in this society of uncertainty are the migrants. And this has affected me in a very personal and deep way, like many of you. So in the last 6 months, I took a quest. engaging in conversations with global citizens around the world, trying to understand our society's current perspective of migration. I had the privilege and honor to meet heads of state at the United Nations, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, some of the victims of the wars in the Jordanian camps, Hollywood stars, many of whom are actually in this room today, for which I thank them. And one vital truth comes out from this conversation. When we limit human mobility, when we limit migration, we're limiting the use of one of our most valuable social growth tools. Now, I don't want to oversimplify the complexity so many countries are facing today with welcoming refugees looking for a better life. It is a challenge, but I do believe it is also an opportunity for these societies. I learned two key elements I would like to share with you from my quest. Number one, migration is instrumental for encouraging innovation. And two, migration needs a new brand. We need to change our way of thinking and talking about migration. Now, I like to see this mobility of human capital as a two-way exchange, as a conductor of ideas and innovation, which can represent tremendous investment opportunities. Looking at countries like Canada, United States, Australia, one would assume society knows the value of having a strong, robust migration programs. Recently, I was reading an IMF report which indicates clearly that investing €1 in welcoming refugees will bring €2 to that society within 5 years, if these refugees are allowed to work. Reminds us as well the innovative benefits of having refugees, reminding us who is Albert Einstein, Sergey Brin, Steve Jobs. Refugees are sons of immigrants. Currently, 40% of the Fortune 500 companies in the US are owned or managed by first or second generation of migrants. More interestingly, 30% of the Chinese companies publicly traded in the Shanghai Stock Exchange are owned or managed by Chinese immigrants who came back home, bringing with them their knowledge and experience into the motherland. So clearly, it is a two-way exchange, an emulsion of ideas, investment opportunities through human capital. If necessity is the mother of invention, I like to see migration as the conductor of innovation. I would repeat it. I think it's important. If necessity is the mother of invention, migration is truly the conductor of innovation. When we look at Earth from space, we see ourselves as a one. We see land, water, and atmosphere, a vast openness of unity. No lines, no divisions, no borders. Our only boundaries is the way we see ourselves, and our only borders, the way we see each other. We must become global citizens. Now, looking at migration as a capsule of time, I would agree in the last 10 years, we see challenges of countries welcoming people in a search, millions of people in a search for a better life. But if we were to zoom out and to look at migration for the last 100 years, like we do in a graphic for a stock market performance, you would see a consistent upward trajectory of adding value to society. Now, there are two kinds of migration, selected and unselected. Selected migration represents the way countries are designing their population to their benefits, by selecting people based on their professional profile, doctors, scientists, economists, teachers. Unselected flow represents millions of people crossing borders, could represent security and economic concerns. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that today we see migration only in that way. When unselected migration represents 17% of people on the move. Are we forgetting the benefits of the 83% to our society? Looking at Canada, a country that I have experienced firsthand, their migration policy every year accepts 260,000 migrants. 3/4 are selected professionals like my parents, adding value to Canadian society and economy. Less than 20% are refugees, but 1% are what we call the wealthy migrants, the investor, the entrepreneurs who are bringing $2 billion to Canadian economy every year, completely covering the cost of all integration programs. Last month, I was a guest at the United Nations General Assembly for Antigua and Barbuda, and I was listening carefully to Secretary General Guterres, who said that he sees migration flows as a challenge that can bring the world together. He said, I quote, "Every country has the right to control its own border, but that must be done in a way that protects the rights of people on the move. Instead of closed door and open hostility, we need to reestablish the integrity of the refugee protection plan. With a truly global sharing of responsibility, the number of refugees we're facing can be managed. Migration should be an option, not a necessity." Ladies and gentlemen, we must shift away from seeing migration as potential political tool to a tool of potential. Too many politicians are using human lives and tragedy to gain votes, to retain power. It doesn't have to be that way. We must change our view of seeing migration as a cost to bear to an investment which bears fruits. And for this, we have an innovative approach that we have recommended to our industry. It's called the Global Citizen Tax Initiative. How would it work? A percentage of the investment of the wealthy migrants in their process for second residency or citizenship would go to fund the needs of the more urgent society challenges, being that migration, integration of refugees in Europe are facing together climate change in the Caribbean. A clearly win-win-win scenario. Win for the nations, win for the wealthy migrant, and a win for those in needs at no cost to society. And we must change our language when we talk about migration, from negative to positive. We must stop labeling destructive change and suggesting constructing transformation. Migration needs a new brand. And now when I look at my family, for every generation, wherever we have gone, we have tried to add value to this society. I will continue my quest to ensure that my kids will live in a society that will see migration as a part of the future kind of humankind. My company will continue to open doors to opportunities, to facilitate the much needed human and financial capital for countries and governments to build a society on global citizen values. Being that disasters of climate change, political wars, we don't have the luxury of time. It's 11:59. People need our help urgently, and we must act together and act now. In this room, we have the economic power of more than $400 billion, estimated by our friends from Wealthtex. We have the reach from our phones to share our thoughts and ideas to more than 300 million people from this very much dome, estimated by Financial Times. Not only we have the power to do that, we have the obligation to inspire change, to provoke people to make a difference. And nobody says it better than Kofi Annan at our last closing speech of the Global Citizen Forum.
If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. We have a long way to go. We can only do so if we go together.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have a long journey, but I know we can get there if we go together as a community of global citizens. Thank you very much for your attention.